Hey,
Well, how are you, man?
good. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
Just, transitioning into the holidays. It's my kids finished their tests. They're done. We the lizards wrapped a movie on Tuesday. I don't know why I
Yeah,
feel like I'm crooked.
a
Okay.
little bit, but the picture looks great, so you're all
Okay.
set. Um,
Yeah, so I finished up on the project this week, and so we're all kind of done. And
so is it safe to say that I'm getting somewhat of an exclusive here?
absolutely, absolutely. I think we've done almost no press, yeah, on this project. So yeah.
And everything we talk about is okay to get out. There's no one saying you got to hold off on the press till this time
No,
or that
there
time.
may be elements that I have to be vague about, but I think at this point, yeah, there's no reason we can't talk.
Okay, who is the worst person to work with? No, I'm just kidding.
I am
Um,
always the worst person to work with on the set. Yeah.
well, tell me about the movie. I purposely stayed away from any news about the movie and what it's about, the premise, and all that. I know it's called Quasi, but tell me about the movie. What did you guys just wrap on?
So the Broken Lizard guys just finished another movie for Searchlight, who we did Super Troopers, both of those movies, and Club Dread. Um, we were, after Super Troopers 2 came out, they asked, okay, what do we want to do next? And we weren't prepared to start getting into a Super Troopers 3. We'd kind of kicked around some ideas, but there's no script. And they said, well, do you have anything else that's finished that we could maybe get into production? And we gave them this script that we had for a lot of years that was a very Python-esque period piece costumey movie called Quasi that's about Quasimodo, the Hunchback, and it takes place in 13th century France, um, where Quasimodo, who works in the king's torture chamber, uh, is summoned by both the king and the pope and told that each of them wants him to assassinate the other, and so he gets sucked into this political intrigue and has to figure out how to get out of it. So it's unlike anything we've ever done, uh, and that we thought the studio would think it was too off brand for us, but they really liked the script, so we developed it with them for about a year and then went into production. So it will be. I don't know if they'll be theatrical. Ultimately, it's going to be on Hulu sometime next year. No date yet, but there may be. You know, movies. Most movies don't come out in movie theaters anymore, so we're just sort of
Adapting.
adapting to the
Yeah.
new reality of Hollywood. But that was fine. Like we were just shocked that they even wanted to make this movie because it's so different from anything that we've done. So yeah, we just finished it up, and actually I think it's pretty awesome
What's your role?
because it's this Python-esque situation. Each of us has multiple roles. Really, all the five of us have two primary roles and then get sprinkled in here and there. So I am primarily the Pope, and I am also Quasimodo's boss, the superintendent at the torture chamber. And so, yeah, I got to play the Pope, which you know
How do
will
you research that?
definitely get me sent directly to hell, but was a blast and absolutely the coolest thing that I've ever done because in this movie he's kind of really one of the bad guys that both he and the king are these sort of corrupt political figures trying to undermine the other. So it's just great to play a bad guy, but to play the Pope, who is this cartoonishly villainous, incredibly powerful person, was completely different than anything that I've ever done, and it's awesome. Like you'll see, like the wardrobe. I have like a white wig. I have like 8 different ensembles, each with flowing gilded robes and silken cloaks and the big hat, and takes 5 people to get me into my wardrobe. And so you start to, it's easy to start to feel incredibly important and powerful. And yeah, kind of a really cool ride. Yeah.
Where did you guys have to travel to film?
We didn't, which was the amazing thing. We always assumed that doing something that involved castles and a medieval village would have to be either overseas or at least in Canada. We found a place just north of LA. It's a movie ranch. There are a bunch of them up there where they have built standing sets. So we realized we could take their really the Middle Eastern set, like it's used for like Navy SEALs, TV shows, stuff like that. It kind of plays as what might be like a village in Afghanistan, and that really structurally it worked for our medieval village. We just then had to skin everything and put wooden facades, and then they had big kind of sets that we could turn into the king's chamber, the torture chamber. So we'll have to definitely do some VFX to sort of green up the environment, and there'll be some shots where we'll have to lay a sort of castle background in. But we were all amazed how we could go to this place basically 45 minutes north and get everything we needed in one spot instead of having to go overseas. And especially now, it's great to not have to leave the family to work on a project. It's
So
worked out perfectly.
who's at home now? You said you had kids that just finished tests. Young kids, older kids?
Yeah, 15-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl. So my son's freshman, and this was his first year of finals. So yeah, it was a big difference for him. But yeah, through it, done, and I think
Are
it'll
they
make it
starting to
easier.
come in? Are they starting to come into what Dad does? Super Troopers came out 20 years ago. This year, actually, celebrating the 20th anniversary.
Right, right.
Do they realize the cult figure that you and the guys are?
I mean, they will see Super Troopers or other projects pop up on TV. Um, but that has been the case since they were really little. So I think they really normalized it and don't
Mm.
necessarily think there's anything particularly interesting or cool about it.
Mm.
They they think it's cool if we're out and somebody comes up and says hi, or, like my daughter is really into reading S.E. Hinton, and she watched The Outsiders, and it's her favorite movie, and she fell in love with Rob Lowe. And I'm able to say, well, you know what? A few years ago, you probably don't remember, but like I made a movie with Rob Lowe, and here are pictures of you and Rob Lowe. So that like that suddenly got
Mm.
her. She seemed to have that eureka moment of like, oh, that's right, my dad does these cool things and is celebrity adjacent. Uh, so yeah, so now she's like, oh, you got to make a movie with Matt Dillon because she's in love with Matt Dillon from The Outsiders. So now,
She
yeah,
has a
that
wish list of people to for you to work with. Yeah.
well, it's like I have to go through that whole list of the cast of The Outsiders, and it's like these are Patrick Swayze's dead. We at least got to meet him. I can tell her the story of meeting him, but like those are a lot of heavy hitters. I can't just call up Tom Cruise.
Wait,
Uh,
you could get on Cobra Kai. They still have a couple more seasons left.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, and that's it. Then she became a big Cobra Kai fan through Ralph Macchio. So it's been fun to see her fall in love with other movies because she fell in love with The Outsiders. So now it's like she's watching all these old Matt Dillon movies and Patrick Swayze movies. Now she really loves Dirty Dancing, and so it's been fun to, especially since that ensemble of actors went on to do so many movies, so many great movies,
Mm.
that it's really opened her up to a lot of great stuff.
And speaking of amazing people you worked with, I mean, you've worked with Brian Cox. It seems like every movie you guys make, there's a name or a face. Cloris Leachman, Brian Cox, one of my favorite actors, who's doing pretty well right now in his show, and Willie Nelson. I mean, kind of, because I know you guys had a big part in Dukes of Hazzard, putting that out.
Sure,
So
sure.
you got to work with
Yeah, and he
Willie
popped into
Nelson.
Beerfest, so yeah, Willie's
That's
amazing.
right, Beerfest, yeah,
Yeah.
and Bill Paxton, of course, amazing individual. I have my coconut tea. Oh, here it is. Hold on. My Coconut Pete 45 here.
Yeah. People
My
people
friend,
like those. Those are still we're still
still
moving
kicking
the
around.
needle on that the Coconut Pete vinyl.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. My friend Jay got me that.
But
But
yeah,
yeah,
no, you mentioned Brian Cox, and you know, you talked about a nasty piece of work, the Blumhouse
yeah, that was
Christmas
fun.
thing that I did. Yeah, that was really developed for Brian to be the lead, and we were trying to package it with another big name female actress. Um, and we had been doing that for about a year and making little progress, couldn't quite close the deal. And then when that opportunity came up to do it for Blumhouse, it was definitely at a different budget level, and that it didn't work for Brian. Um, but yeah, that was supposed to be that lead character is supposed to was he and I worked on the script together. He gave me notes. I really developed it with him, which made the script better. But yeah, will always make me a little sad that uh, that wasn't Brian playing that role.
But there's always Super Troopers 3, right?
Yeah, and we are still
Hopefully.
writing that, and there's some
Yeah.
other stuff. I mean, he's you see him, and he's not just become he's always a fantastic actor, but the way that he's risen in his popularity and the fact that he's now a big name to attach to any project. So it's helpful that as I'm thinking of stuff that I may want to try to write or go out and sell, that I can reach out to him and try to get him interested in stuff because
How
he's
did that
he's the man.
how did that relationship start? Because Super Troopers, you guys, I mean, that was your first feature film. Um, how and I'm sure you were looking for a big name at that point for that role. How did that relationship begin?
Um, we were definitely trying to get a bigger name for Captain O'Hagan, and it had just, as you said, when you're packaging a script, when you're trying to either get it financed or you've got the financing, but you're now moving forward and you want to bring names in, you send the script around Hollywood to the agencies and let them know you're looking for somebody. And it had just gotten back to us, and I can't remember who his agent was, but somebody had reached out to us and said, Brian Cox is looking for a comedy because most of what he does is really serious, is really heavy. uh, um, he had done Rushmore.
He was the original Hannibal Lecter.
Right. But I mean, all that stuff that he'd done or was certainly known for was pretty dramatic.
Hmm.
So that's when you get lucky, I think, in terms of finding a bigger name to get involved in your project, is you have to find that person who's not getting the calls to do this kind of movie. And sometimes that's a comedic actor who wants to do something more serious. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's a dramatic actor who wants to do something funnier. So that was the case there, is that we were just told he was really eager to play something light. And so we asked him through his people to do it, and he did. And you know, we're thankful because it made us all better at our jobs because he's so good. But then, became this great relationship where we felt like we had put him on the map in a different space. And then he
Yeah.
continued to kind of build and build. And, I'd run into him like 7 or 8 years later in LA, and he had said, I at this point in my career, I still, people approach me most about Super Troopers, and he thought that was really awesome, and just cool. Where I'm on the season finale of Succession right now, but it's so much fun to watch that show, knowing him and seeing that he can have this steady ascent as a character actor for years and years and years, and then really get handed the role that will define him. You know, late in life that you
Hmm.
can still pop and break out. I mean, a lot of people knew who he was, but a lot of people didn't know. I think he's really pretty much become a household name thanks to Succession, and it's super cool to watch that. It's a great show, but just to see what that has done for him.
Well, like you said, he found a whole other audience. But the thing about Brian Cox and his character, he doesn't have his own pop figure.
No, not that I know of, but I bet you it's in
I
the.
have
It's got to be
maybe
in the.
someone has made one, but this is my Foster. I've got all the guys here. Is this surreal to you?
It is. It was a funny kind of journey to get there because I started to become aware that there was even a thing, a Funko Pop phenomenon when Stolhansky and I would go to Comic Cons or autograph conventions. A few years before COVID, we started getting invited to those things, and he and I were the guys who were like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to Detroit and go to a convention and meet fans and sign stuff." So we'd been doing that for a couple of years, and that's when you walk around those things, you're like, oh, okay. Then now you'd see stacks and stacks and stacks of those figurines, and we realized this was now like an important, meaningful cultural phenomenon. So then that's when we started thinking, man, it'd be really cool if we had Super Troopers Funko Pops. And it was right around that time that we started wishing for it, that it got back to us through our reps. Oh, they're making Super Troopers figures. And Eric and I are like, holy shit, like this is magic. We thought about it. We like spoke it into existence. And then they came out and they were Mac, Farva, and Thorny. So Eric and I, the guys who wished it into existence, were like, what the fuck is this? There's no Foster and there's no Rabbit.
Mm.
And so in fact, we found out that they were just kind of doing that as a trial balloon to see if there was interest. And then they were going to do a next run with our two characters. But there was something so ridiculous about like the two guys who like kind of discovered it and really wanted it to happen were the two guys who didn't get in the initial pressing. So then after, being a squeaky wheel for a couple months, they generated the Foster and the Rabbit ones, which made us very happy. And yeah, like as we talk about our kids, that was one of those cases where seeing that for some reason made me infinitely cooler in the eyes of my children. It wasn't, I turn on the TV and there's my dad. It's I've got a goofy figurine with a huge head sitting on my nightstand, and that makes my dad really cool. So, you realize for kids, those are the kind of things. But then it's
Yeah.
very funny also having your children possess an effigy of you, because I will sometimes walk into their rooms and realize that I had pissed them off because the Funko doll Foster has his head ripped off, or
It's
has been like
hanging.
has been thrown into a corner of the room. I actually had to figure out. I think my son's head is still on Wonky because he ripped the head off when he was pissed off at me about something, and it really doesn't ever come properly back on the way that it's supposed to. So yeah, so it's bizarre knowing that your children, and maybe it's psychologically healthy knowing that your children have this doll that they're taking out their hatred for you on.
As you mentioned, your kids have seen Super Troopers. They've seen your movies. Broken Lizard never gets too blue, and I've always been a fan of that. As much as I love the raunchy R-rated sex comedies, I think I was surprised by Super Troopers that you could show that to your kids of a certain age, of course. And a lot of the innuendo goes over a lot of heads, but you guys relatively keep it clean.
Yeah,
I mean,
somebody's
Club
always
Dread
showing
was a little
they're
different.
drunk off. The guys. Um, it's funny. I mean, I don't think of our stuff as being too raunchy, but then you watch it with the kids, and then you're like, oh yeah,
Good
wait,
point.
yeah, okay, maybe they didn't need to see Lemmy naked doing triangles,
Oh yeah, okay.
or things like that. So yeah, compared to what they can watch, because that's the thing. Like as our kids get into teenage years, like we're going through the Scream franchise now, for
Mm.
instance, or we're letting them watch The Hangover, and it is like, okay, well, they are really seeing things now, whether it's uh, gore or uh, really, naughty, naughty shit, like in The Hangover. You know, I at least feel like I shielded them from that stuff for a while, and I guess now I have to give in and realize if they're not watching this stuff with me, they'll be watching it on their own.
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old boy, and I'm very proud to be introducing some of these movies to him. Scream, we're close to Scream. I'm a little excited about showing because that's one of my favorite horror franchises of all time. Cannot wait for the new one to come out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's part of what triggered it. I think they saw a trailer for the new one and said, "Hey, what is this?" And I said, "Oh my God, that's right. This is a whole franchise that you're not aware of." And yeah, it's especially as a horror guy, I really haven't shared any of that my taste with them. So for them to catch up to it now, yeah, it's I think it's right. I was like, when I see like 8-year-olds, watching Halloween Kills or whatever,
Yeah.
I don't feel awesome about that. Um, but even my daughter at 12, I'm not too worried about messing her up. We'll
Well,
see.
for movie fans too, it's a passing of the torch from
Yeah,
father to son or daughter, and for me at least, it's a special occasion. I have not shown them Super Troopers yet, but that's on the list.
yeah, yeah, yeah. 13-year-old boy, he's probably ready for that.
He is ready for that. You're a horror fan. What are some of your favorite horror movies? Because I just watched recently Badlands of Cain,
Yeah.
which you starred in as a very creepy. You're a priest in that sort of.
Mhm.
Great character. And then, of course, you wrote the Into the Dark segment
Mhm. Yeah,
that we
yeah.
talked about earlier that you can find on Hulu, by the way. It's called A Nasty Piece of Work, and it's really good, real clever. So what do you enjoy as far as horror goes?
I I grew up as a kid, as we talk about sort of age appropriate horror movie watching. I was 10 and my sister was 11 when my parents were divorced, and it was my dad's way of currying favor with us, was to allow my sister and I to watch horror movies on his Betamax player in 1980, 1981, which was the year of the slasher movie.
Mm,
So all of those, so we were watching The Burning, we were watching Pieces, and
pieces.
now
Oh
I look at
God.
those with a certain amount of like rolling my eyes at how cheesy they are. But as for kids, these were like super duper scary, fucked up, intense movies. Um, so to me, you know, as I then got older, I started to enjoy, more sort of interesting, elevated stuff. Like I really love, stuff that can still hold up and be scary and not just you look back on it now and they were like, body count movies. So like I
Right.
showed my son The Descent this summer, and I was like, just so you know, like I think this is like how horror movies are supposed to be. It's well done, it's smart, it's scary as shit. We are identifying with the victims slash heroes, and it's not like, oh, check out this cool monster and let's see how many people he can kill. Like so to me, I just really gravitate toward the stuff that um isn't just trying to be about creative ways to murder people. Um, you know, I took him also to see Halloween Kills for his birthday. Um, and there was a point at which I lost track. It was like, I think he's
It was
killed
a lot.
45, 50 people at this point. Um, so, it's important to me to sort of make sure that every time he sees one of those movies, to see something that I think is like, all right, but here's a movie that was really about scaring audiences and how
Yeah.
exciting that can be. And so, all right, you got to watch Poltergeist,
I liked the last one, Halloween begins, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Halloween, yeah. Well, I know
Um,
Halloween Ends is the third one. Halloween
right.
Kills, Halloween, yeah.
From what I understand, this middle one wasn't as good as what they promised the last one to be, and the first one was. So, but I really give them credit for writing the way they did and being able to bring back that character, all the characters in a whole new setting, and just
Yeah, yeah,
going
yeah.
from the first one to now here comes the sequels.
Yeah, to say, right, all right, to say, let's forget about everything between the original and now, and let's really take a serious look at what this could look like for these people all these years later. And yeah, that's what I really liked about that reboot from 2018.
Mm,
And then the funny thing is, to me, it then the sequel suffers from sequelitis the way that Halloween 2 did, which was like, okay, well, wait a minute, now we have to rev everything up, and so there
mm.
has to be more violence, there has to be more gore, and it becomes the point where now, like, I don't feel like in Halloween Kills, Michael Myers is really Michael Myers anymore, who used to be this kind of quiet, lurking boogeyman who might be standing behind you in the kitchen when you close the refrigerator door, but that he's a machine now. He
Yeah.
really is a literal killing machine in the second one. And they try to intellectualize that, but at
Mm.
the same time, I'm like, all right, when you have Michael Myers like a superhero killing 20 people at once in a scene, like a ninja, I'm like, nah, that's not Mike Myers. Like, I don't that version of Mike Myers doesn't scare me. The Mike Myers that like might be in my basement, which is just a human being with zero soul, with zero conscience,
Just standing
that
in the dark.
scares me. Yeah, because that's what that first movie was about.
Yeah.
Was John Carpenter saying, you know what? Culturally, we've gotten to a point where there are people out there with just no compunction who might be in the suburbs outside of your house or outside of my house. Um, but I get, that's a very quaint provincial notion now, which is presumably not necessarily scary in the zeitgeist because we have mass murderers everywhere. We don't have to get too heavy on it, but yeah, it you know paints you into a funny corner if you're a horror maker now about like how do you scare people when we're so desensitized to all of what's going on around us.
Yeah, not just the movies that we've seen, because there's millions of horror movies, but just the actual news itself. There needs to be a new brand of horror. I don't know what that is. You
Yeah, I
do,
mean,
you know.
so what I try to do, and whether it was something like a nasty piece of work where I was trying to say like it's really funny, but also really fucked up what people would do if offered a position to elevate their station in life. That similarly, I did a movie called Dark Circles that was about a couple and having their first baby and suffering from sleep deprivation and starting to think that there's somebody in the house with them that okay, that was based on my experience, and there was hopefully a psychological kernel of scary truth to that. Yeah, to me, that's like when horror is good is when they have found right. What's that little nugget of something that right now each of us is keeps us up a little bit at night. Yeah,
Uh, let's talk about the guys a bit. Are you still working on Tacoma FD with the boys? I know you directed a few
yeah. It was
episodes,
just
wrote a
ordered for
few.
just ordered for season 4. So I get a little Christmas vacation, and then second week of January, the writers' room starts for Tacoma FD season 4. So it's really nice to time it out to come off of a movie, take a breather at Christmas, and jump right into a TV show. I'm um, very lucky that like at my age, every year I think, okay, this has got to be the last year that I'm going to be employable in the entertainment industry to have it be that I'm like really busier than I ever have been. So I'm grateful.
Well, the nice thing is you still have friends. You still have Broken Lizard. I mean, you guys can put anything out. You have this fan base that will follow you. And the nice thing about Tacoma PD is it is a little slice of Broken Lizard
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
we've come to expect from the movies.
yeah. And I think that's what's nice too is that um, because of the proliferation of content outlets, um, you don't have to have a gigantic fan base to become viable. So, like in the
Mm.
case of this new Broken Lizard movie, Searchlight is now doing movies for Hulu. So they're not going to be big budget movies, but they've got to put content out there. In the case of Tacoma FD, it's on True TV. They're mostly an unscripted network, so the bar isn't Like, we don't have to have 5 million people watching an episode of Tacoma FD for it to be viable content. So that's what's nice now, is that now that's not just about movies are for theaters and TV are for a handful of networks,
Mm.
um, and therefore you must have to be incredibly popular to be worth an investment. We can take our small but faithful group of fans, and that's enough to get us, okay, a movie for Hulu, okay, a TV show for True TV. So
Oh, because ultimately
hopefully, yeah.
you can find it everywhere. It's I mean, I'm watching Tacoma on demand somewhere. I don't even know where I'm watching it, but I've got it programmed to my TV somewhere. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and the
and it
same
goes
with
on HBO Max, so it's yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, there are all these places now that uh, uh, need programming. So,
Is
what's hard is that it can be hard to live off that if that's the only thing you're doing. If I was just doing Tacoma, or for anybody who's a writer on a streaming show that does 10 episodes a year, that you can't live off of that. So that's the tricky part that I think they need to figure out, is that you can be a working writer and have a TV show that's gone on for 8, 9, 10 seasons, and that's considered success. But because you're only doing 10 episodes a year, that's not a lot to live off of.
sure. Is working with Broken Lizard the same today as it was well, it's more than 20 years ago because were you guys in college
Sure, yeah,
together? Is
30
that
years. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we
30
started
years? Yeah.
working together
What's the difference between
in the
filming
90s.
now with the guys and filming, say, when you were filming for the original Super Troopers?
I mean, the nice thing about filming is that it ends up feeling like it always did. Like, we feel still like we're excited to be there, and everybody's having a good time and trying to make each other laugh. So that's the best part. I think the difference of working with the guys in terms of the writing, yeah, that's where it gets tough, because you know 30 years ago we were living together in college. We graduated. We lived together for that first probably 5 or 6 years. So we were together all the time. So you were always, even hanging out, you were writing because you were riffing
Mm,
and bullshitting and trying to make each other laugh. And then you'd go out drinking, and it was the same thing. You're bullshitting like you do with your friends, but you're like, oh, wait a minute. Anything that makes everybody laugh is potentially an idea that gets put into a movie. So there was so much time spent together and so much bandwidth that we could devote to one another, that it just generated so many ideas. And just so, and it's a bummer, but it's inevitable, and it's nobody's fault, is that now guys are grown up, guys have families,
mm.
guys have commitments to other things. Obviously we don't live together, so when we write, it's just like, okay, hey, can everybody do 2 hours on Wednesday? Can you guys squeeze time to do this and that? And then it just creates a different dynamic where you feel the pressure of, like, all right, this is our only chance to work together this week. Let's be really funny, let's be really productive. When really the best version of Broken Lizard is, you've got all the time in the world and you're just bullshitting, and you end up with material out of that, instead of sitting down and being like, all right, what's funny material for us to come up with. So it's just not
Mm.
not as easy or natural or effortless as it used to be.
Couple more questions. I've kept you a while, but I want to thank you for hanging out with me for a bit.
Yeah.
Are there any future Broken Lizard projects you can talk about? I know we talked about the possibility of another Super Troopers.
Yeah, so since we got into production on Quasi, we have circled Super Troopers 3 as the most likely candidate, because now there is at least a rough draft. So we're further along there. Searchlight definitely wants to do it, so that is probably the most likely next project. But what was nice about doing Quasi, it's it reminded us that we used to, back in the day, write a lot of things like that, because we were so inspired by Monty Python. We
Mm.
wrote stuff that took place in ancient Greece. We wrote stuff that takes place on an island of karate tribes, like really absurdist, silly stuff that we're now like, man, it's really fun doing that. So I think it really inspired the guys to go back and revisit some of those types of projects, whether they were scripts or outlines or whatever, and say, oh shit, this was really, really fun doing something like this, putting on wigs, speaking in accents. Let's do more of that. So I think while, yeah, Super Troopers 3 is on deck, this really got everybody excited about doing some of those absurdist, more Python-esque projects.
Beerfest had a moment. You guys were riding on the 5-seat bicycle together, and it was that moment that I'm like, oh, these guys, they go back to the Monty Python days. They're influenced by Monty. I don't know why that just sticks out in my mind is that bicycle.
Yeah, I think when we have been our most absurd, that yeah, audiences, guys like you, are able to sort of draw that line,
Yeah,
connect the dots. Uh, um, it's a thing that like we always hated because you can't. Understandably, people are so protective about Monty Python that it has always been hard for us to even mention their name without somebody saying, "Oh, these guys think they're the next Monty Python." I think
well, I
finally
see it
we've
as
also
tribute.
we've also gotten to a point where in our careers we've been doing this long enough that I think people will allow us to make a really Python-esque movie and not feel like it's imitation, but that it is, we just would love to be able to do something that resembles the stuff that we loved when we were kids that made us want to do comedy. So hopefully that'll be the reaction to Quasi, and that hopefully it'll get people excited about having us do more stuff that's like Python without making people feel like we think we are Monty Python.
Does anybody get an address?
Oh, there's dresses all over the place. I mean, it was actually a debate for a while because basically when we decided that we would play multiple characters, it meant that that cast up the whole movie other than the Queen,
Mm,
and we ended up hiring this fantastic actress, Adrienne Palicki. She's from
mm.
John Wick. She's been in a ton of TV. She's on the Orville
The
right
the reboot of no, that was her brother. Never mind.
now.
The reboot of Friday the 13th. But yeah, I know who she is.
Yeah, she's awesome. But anyway, so she's basically the one female actor in the movie. But there was a time when we were like, well, shit, if we're going to play all the parts, should one of us go ahead and just play the romantic female lead? And then we're like, well, that's gonna paint us into a corner when we're talking about love scenes and stuff like that. So uh, we debated like, okay, does one of us do drag for the movie? So, but there are a lot of uh, similarly theatrical, absurdist, stagey kind of characters that we play in this.
Well, we look forward to it. Do we have a timeline when it might come out? The waiting must be the toughest part.
Well, yeah, I think what's nice is if it's going to go directly to Hulu, you don't have to build in a long marketing ramp. That's
Mm.
always the issue with theatrical movies. So like even when we finished Super Troopers 2, the studio wanted really a whole year to do a big campaign to lead to the theatrical release. In this case, I think we have to deliver the movie to the studio by the end of May, and um, obviously it'll still be marketed, but I think it'll mean that if we deliver the movie at the end of May, it could be out by the some point in the summer. It could be by the end of the
Nice.
summer. So I would, if I had to predict, I'd be like late summer, early fall.
Did I see Kevin directed this one?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah. And that
Nice.
was cool too to make things a little different. He directed Slam and Salmon, but since
Great
then has
movie.
directed a ton of episodes of Tacoma FD, and really because this Quasi had been a pet project for him, we all agreed that he should take the helm, and it's been great. He was awesome and did a great job. It's going to look so much cooler than anything we've done because it really is. There's a lot of authenticity to the sets, to the lighting, the atmosphere of it, the wardrobe, the design. It really looks gorgeous. So it's going to be a cool, just a totally cool, different kind of movie experience for our fans.
Well, that's awesome. We're looking forward to it. And as a super fan myself, I geek out for just a minute and show you my prized
Yes,
possession there. That is signed by you guys. Somebody actually signed it. Bacock! That
that
was
would be Jay. Jay does
yeah,
that, and you have to be special. He only does that on one out of everybody, maybe every 100 things he signs, but he will
really
throw it.
nice. That came with a another poster that you had signed for me to use at an auction, and it brought in a lot of money. So I just wanted to thank you. That was years ago, but
Yeah, absolutely.
I had asked, and you guys sent that to me. I think you sent a couple posters to auction off, so I appreciate that. And Paul, it was great talking to you, man. I look forward to the movie. I look forward to everything you guys do, and hope to talk to you in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. When we have a release date, I'll come on again, and maybe I'll grab a couple of the guys, and we'll do a big push to let everybody know about Quasi when it comes out.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, of course.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you.
All right, take care.